good God, man, please take a breath. Yeah, I can tell. I'm really happy to have you back up to full capacity, dude. No joke. Seriously, I'm very happy. Glad you're no longer under the weather, and I'm glad that we have such a good panel here to talk about all this stuff, because we've got a lot of good stuff to go through here. So.
How's it going, everybody? Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, like we've been talking about, or as Nick has been talking about, we got lots to talk about, so let's get talking.
What's going on, everybody? Happy to be here. Not so sunny today. It's been pretty overcast, and I guess we got some storms rolling through. But hey, why not?
Hello. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be here. I am doing good.
Good.
Yeah. So, Benji-Sales, I basically talk a lot about the gaming industry, specifically like the things that I'm most focused on are like the sales, the business side, that kind of thing is kind of like my specialty, the thing I really put the most energy into. But I also talk about gaming in general, lifelong hardcore gamer. And yeah, I do it on Twitter and YouTube. Twitter's kind of like the main spot you can find me. That's where I'm the most active for sure. Just Benji-Sales on Twitter. But I also have a YouTube, and over there I do the same thing, but I do it in a live format. So I do like a live chat with my audience, usually once, sometimes twice a week. If there's a lot of news to talk about, I'll do 2 streams a week. But yeah, that's pretty much my thing. Thank you. That's an awesome compliment. That's like the main reason I do it. I used to talk about this stuff primarily kind of on forums, which are a little less, in the limelight. That's kind of like where I did all this stuff. I was down in the trenches on forums, and I noticed that online there would be just like a lot of misinformation about some of this stuff. And I felt like that would sometimes cause like a breakdown in talking about games, because I feel like people wouldn't quite understand maybe some of the reasons some of these companies make these decisions. And that's why I was like, you know what, I'm going to go on Twitter, I'm going to go on YouTube, I'm going to start trying to talk about this more publicly. And the reception's been great. Yeah. Mm. Awesome. Sure. Yeah. Happy to kick it off. I think I can probably speak for a lot of people in that I'm playing Final Fantasy VII Remake right now. Yeah. I don't know if we're going to go more in depth on our opinions on this one later. So I don't know if I should kind of save my impressions on Final Fantasy for later.
Honestly, you never know where these conversations go.
I'll just say I'm absolutely loving it. I'm one of the people that, I mean, it's blowing me away, honestly. I'm completely in love with it. I think Square Enix has done an incredible job. So yeah, I've been chipping away at that. Still finishing up Half-Life Alyx. Still been making my way through that, which is also absolutely incredible. And, playing a little bit of Animal Crossing too.
Nice.
Very cool. That's well-rounded stuff there.
Yeah. It looks phenomenal.
It's frankly mind blowing. I mean, truly. I've played a lot of VR. You know, I have PlayStation VR and I also have Oculus Quest. So I've been deep on VR for a while now, and I can just honestly say there is no VR game that has the sense of presence and is so convincing like Half-Life Alyx. It's crazy. Even from the get-go, as soon as the game starts, you're completely transported. The sense of being somewhere else. Valve just did an unbelievable job of that. And it's through the mechanics as well, you know, not just the way the world looks, and the animation is really excellent. The way you move through the environment, it's honestly, it's blowing me away. It's definitely going to be in my top 10 games of the year. If it's not, then that means 2020 is the most mind-blowing year in gaming ever.
That's a good point, because honestly, it's Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I think everybody has the expectation of it to be at that level, sort of thing, right? So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's amazing. If anybody, if you ever get a chance to play it through VR, I recommend it to everyone. You know, I know a lot of people don't do like the PC VR, which makes it harder. So hopefully, maybe, you know, PSVR 2 on the PlayStation 5, you know, maybe Half-Life Alyx will get a port to that. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, if that happens. So hopefully it'll be easier to access for some people later on.
Oh, that'd be nice. That'd be really nice, because for someone like me, I don't have a high-end PC or a PC good enough to get it. And then also being Canadian, it sucks for having the technology prices up here too, because PSVR, you have to pay. I still have to pay like $400 or $500 for a PSVR out here.
Wow.
So it's still not worth it. Like when it first came out, it was almost $1,000 after taxes.
Woo.
So yeah, it's been difficult for someone like me to get into that kind of market.
Yeah, no, I definitely recommend it. It feels like, you know, back whenever Oculus very first started talking about VR, and I feel like the first games that came out didn't quite, you know, hit that promise that everyone was like hoping for, like, you know, those true VR experiences. There were some cool things, but it took a while to get going. This was the game where I was playing it and I was like, man, back when Oculus was first ramping up and everything, this is VR like I imagined it. It's incredible.
Ugh. I'm a little jealous. Not gonna lie, I'm a little jealous. One game, like you said, it's a whole new type of gaming experience too, right? So even for anyone that's even a gaming fan, they should be excited. Like, oh, you should even have a slight inkling to try it.
Yeah,
it looks fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those that in chat, they're saying they could not hear me. I think I adjusted my issue. Because it would not be a podcast week if my Yeti didn't provide some interesting curveball for me to get through. So yeah, if you could just throw in the chat if you can hear me now. I can't believe that my intro probably is mute then. But hey, it should be on the recording, so hopefully. Sam, what have you been playing?
So, I've been playing a metric ton of Resident Evil 3, because I did the review a couple of weeks ago, and I had to prep for that, and then I did a bunch of guides, so if you're having trouble finding those 20 stupid smug bobbleheads, I found them for you.
Thank you, Sam.
So beyond that, and I enjoy Resident Evil 3. I think Resident Evil 2 Remake is probably the better overall package, but I think Resident Evil 3 is very good on its own. I enjoy it. I enjoy Jill as a protagonist. I'm having fun going back through that on higher difficulties. I also found time to get back to Doom Eternal and finish that up this morning. My God, what a glorious game! Doom Eternal is so good. Runs so smoothly. The combat loop is just phenomenal. Other people have talked about it at length, so I won't wax on too long, but it's fantastic. And beyond that, I've been getting my multiplayer on in Gears 5 Operation 3 with the new Gridiron mode they introduced. I've been having a lot of fun with that, and Call of Duty Modern Warfare's Warzone Battle Royale. The Season 3 there as well just kicked off, and so I've been getting in some matches with that. Haven't gotten a win yet, but working on it.
So hold up. Let's dial it back. I'm playing JRPGs right now, and you're playing FPS games.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Like I'm not sure what happened here, but we've come full circle.
It's a pandemic world.
Yeah. 2020 is a weird one. Eric, what have you been playing?
Oh man, I've been just submerged in Doom Eternal. That's all I've been playing.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I figured you like that, Nate.
Oh man, you don't know how happy I get when someone's like, "Hey, I'm playing Doom or any form of Doom." I'm like, "Yep, that's it. That's it right there."
No, I've just been in the zone, like rocking through that, making pretty good progress in it. It's definitely hitting that OCD where I'm trying to find like every little thing in the level.
Yep, I understand that one. I was the same way when I started playing too. I was like, "Oh, collectible! Oh, collectible! Oh, I can see all the collectibles on the map. Gotta get them."
Actually, I have to admit though, what I really liked about Doom Eternal was finding the secrets manually felt a lot easier than in Doom 2016.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I went through my first playthrough without really looking for everything, and I was like, "Oh, I have all the upgrades. Cool."
Yeah.
Where are
It
you
definitely
at in
feels-
Doom Eternal, Eric? Just out of curiosity.
Let's see. I just landed on Mars. I blew the hole open.
So you got catapulted through the cannon manually?
Yeah, and I'm like,
There
only
you
the
go.
Slayer would like shoot himself through a cannon into a planet. And it immediately made me think. I saw like a poll the other day, and all the silly little who would wins, and they people pit like Kratos against some whoever, and you're like, wait a minute, they pitted Master Chief against Demon Slayer, and I'm kind of like, damn, who would win that fight?
Yeah,
Doomslayer.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning to it.
Yeah.
I don't know if he will survive shooting himself through a cannon into a planet.
So,
Yeah, that was-
if you've done that, that means you've had your first Marauder encounter, correct?
I did.
How did you like the Marauder?
Yeah, he's like, oh, you can feel that. Ugh.
I hated him.
Yeah. He's a bit of a son of a bitch. I will say that. Probably took me, and keep in mind, I'm not playing it on like Nightmare or anything like that. It's weird. Like I can play Souls games, I can play Sekiro, but I'm just like something like this. My first playthrough, I just kind of just did it on was it Hurt Me Plenty or whatever it is.
Yeah.
No, I'm trying to think of the
Yeah, it's like the middle of the road one, right?
Yeah, something to that effect. So, it probably took me like 2 or 3 attempts, and I got him. But I was like, yeah, it's just that thing where you got him on that last hit, and then some little low level demon sneaks up behind you and hits you because he just tagged you a few times. I'm like, son of a bitch, But yeah, I remember hearing like the nightmare stories about him, and I know from what I understand, I think he gets a little bit better as you go on there.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
guys
sure.
talk about some of the stuff.
Definitely, he gets easier. Yeah, absolutely.
But I did go. I've been doing the demon gates as I've been going along and knocking those out, and then I ran into one where he's actually in there, and he took me out on that one. I was kind of like, I'll come back to this because I kind of want to keep progressing. But
I'm not gonna.
But
lie,
I cleared the room. I cleared the room except for him.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Those Slayer gates are a little tricky because if you do them in the order that they appear, they throw enemies at you that you haven't encountered yet. So you're
Exactly.
like, whoa,
Exactly.
What's
I'm like, who's this dude? Yeah. But yeah, I managed until I got to him, and then I was pretty much out of ammo. I was kind of like, oh, this is gonna be rough.
Yeah, no,
So.
he's really rough in a controller space. Like soon, like I kind of kept my sensitivities around like middle of the ground while I was playing Doom Eternal, and then I got into him, and I just went into my controller settings and cranked the sensitivity to max, and then he was a piece of cake. I really feel like he was a enemy that was more aimed at like a PC mouse and keyboard audience than a controller audience because weapon cycling. It was so
I've heard
important.
PC is not near as much of a challenge. I've heard PC is like a lot better for him than console.
Yeah,
I believe
That
it.
makes sense. Yeah, especially for how you're supposed to kind of like watch for his cues and hit him a specific way. It definitely kind of feels that way. Yeah.
My only complaint with him, I didn't mind them throwing him in there. A lot of people said it breaks up the action too much. I didn't mind having him throw it in there. My only problem was it felt really inconsistent on what his range was. I was either getting hit with that shotgun or I was getting the dog after me 24/7. I'm like, I hate this dog.
Oh yeah, and that the dog chasing you around the Slayer in that Slayer gate level, you're just like, I'm dealing with him. I'm dealing with the Marauder. I'm dealing with whoever the other new guys are. I have not met yet. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
everyone had issues with the Marauder. My biggest problem was definitely. I'm definitely gonna say the oh god, what's it called? The Archvile. Sam will attest to this. The Archvile. Your first encounter with him is not fun. Not fun at all. But great game.
It wasn't that bad to me.
I'm not going to ruin the Archvile reveal for Eric because that threw me off for that level for like 10 minutes. So I'm going to let you enjoy that. Jared, what have you been playing, sir?
Only one game of note this time, and you guys know how often I flip-flop between games almost on a daily basis, and it has been Neo 2. I've been really, really, really enjoying that game.
Yeah, I've been seeing you been putting in time on that.
Oof, man, like being a Dark Souls fan, like I'm a really, really big Dark Souls fan. So finding something that even remotely plays akin to Dark Souls in general for even basic like gameplay combat, it's awesome for me to find. And then you find something that is even closer to the combat like Dark Souls as to like it's if the feel is almost exactly the same, and that's why I like it. Except it's Japanese folklore, demons and stuff like that. It's a whole different world. I really enjoy that, but I still don't like the level bases. I want that big, giant grandeur of a world to run and explore through. Yeah, like this. I got some gripes with the game. I've had it since the first one, but this just scratches that nice Dark Soul itch that I've been needing for so long. So long, to the point where I almost might go back play Dark Souls 3 again for the 7th time after this.
Yeah, because that's a normal feeling to have.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I've been kind of weird right now. I've been playing a lot of old stuff right now. Everyone's playing Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm playing the original for the first time. I'm playing the original for the first time because I listened to Sacred Symbols and Colin said, you should really play the first one to appreciate the remake. So I went, sure, why not? I'll do the original and then do the remake. So I'm about 5 hours into that, really enjoying it. Even as someone who's not a huge JRPG guy, really enjoying that.
And Nick, can I? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. Can I ask you one question though?
Yeah.
Because I was doing the same exact thing, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to rock through this. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to play the remake. But now, watching everyone being so hype on the remake, I'm like,
it's so good.
I'm like, huh. And then I talked to a buddy of mine who's like big into like Final Fantasy VII, like he's played the original like numerous times, and he told me today, he said, no, he said do the remake first because he's some hours into it.
Yeah.
He said, and then go back and play the other one. That way you'll see. He gave me like the reverse like advice. He said you'll see. Because he said because they did so many different things with the remake that he's seeing. He said it'll give you a different appreciation for the the original. I'm like, huh. Now what?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. No spoilers, but they have radically changed that game. Radically. Remake is not like a Resident Evil 2 remake where it's a little changes, but it's really faithful to the original. The Final Fantasy VII remake is, completely changed. Completely.
Oh,
okay, so Benji, you have the final word, Benji. You set us straight. Do we jump into remake or do we
it's funny
play OG first?
It's funny because Colin actually commented on one of my tweets about it, and he was saying I'm encouraging people to play the original first. It's tough because at least where I'm at in the game, I'm not super far. I've heard the ending of the remake gets more confusing. I'm on chapter 5 right now, and my feelings are it's pretty easy to follow. Like, I don't feel like anyone would be confused, even if they were a newcomer, at least where I'm at. I have heard, I think Jason Schreier in his review said that the last chapter could be very confusing. So I'm curious where that goes. Like, maybe if by the end, if you haven't played the original, it might be really confusing what's going on. Just my opinion on this, I think people could jump straight into the remake and be fine. At least where I'm at right now. I think you could be fine. But either way, it's so good. It's so good.
All right,
I could gush about that game for hours. I kid you not.
I'm still gonna do both. Like, I'm gonna rock both.
Yeah.
Like I said, I never played the original back on PS1. I wasn't into like JRPG and turn-based then. I am now. So it's sort of like I do want to go back and experience that. And I'm like, But damn, yeah, it's just really cool watching everybody like considering all the concerns people had for remakes, you know, over the last few years, seeing it all here now and the feedback people are giving. It's been really great to see.
Yeah, that's the thing that blew me away the most. Like, it was one of those things that's such a huge gamble because the original game, you know, it's so highly regarded for so many people that it's like it would be so easy to mess that up. And especially when you're changing things, because like I said, this isn't a one-to-one remake. It's greatly changed the story and expanded on it. But man, somehow Square Enix pulled it off. I can't believe it.
There's one thing I will always say about Square Enix. When it comes to communicating about their games or getting them out on time, they're absolutely terrible. But when it comes to actually delivering on a great finished product, they hit it out of the park like 98% of the time, and it's really amazing to watch. And now that you've gushed about it, I have to go buy it on my PS4 now because I can put off buying it. Nope.
Yeah, my deluxe edition didn't come yet. It doesn't come until Tuesday.
Oh man, yeah. Those physical shipments got all messed up.
Yeah, because I was lucky enough to get that Amazon deal back when Wario 64 posted it like last year. I think it was like $49.
Yep, I got the same deal. The same deal, Eric. Mine's been delayed till Tuesday as well.
And I'm like, okay, I'm okay with that. $49 same. I'm like, I can wait.
Yeah, worth
getting
it.
the steel book and getting the extra stuff at a deep discount. I'm all right.
Yep.
But speaking of physical delays, that kind of ties into what we were going to talk about later on. So, Nick, if you want to lead us into the news.
I can lead you into the news after I say one final thing, is that Resident Evil 3 Remake is amazing, and Jill is best girl ever. Like, that's it. Well, until I play Final Fantasy 7 Remake, because
that game, I see a lot of people posting a lot of thirsty stuff from Final Fantasy 7. I understand. I can definitely understand.
But no, I'm playing Resident Evil 3 Remake as well, and I don't want to say a lot about it, but man, I forgot how good Nemesis was and how much I hate that man.
I still haven't played it. I'm really excited to get to it. I haven't played that one yet.
Same here.
The only complaint I kind of have is the Nemesis sections feel very on rails. You feel very limited in what you can do to avoid him, and the encounters feel incredibly scripted, but at the same time, he's just absolutely terrifying. Like, the first time he whips out the flamethrower, I'm like, okay, yeah, I've got pistol ammo. This will be great. I can totally deal with this guy. And, like, the different transformations he has throughout the game, it's just so incredibly well done. I've got some griefs with it, but I'll wait till I'm done and do a couple of playthroughs of it. It's really good so far. But yeah, we got to jump into the news, and gaming news has been so weird lately because of everything going on in the world, and we're heading into next generation console cycles. Any day of the week we could get random news drops. So on a random Tuesday, Sony just dropped the PlayStation 5 controller out of nowhere. They're just like, hey, here's the DualSense. So PlayStation 5 is obviously on its way at some point, and the DualSense controller, I really like the look of it. I looked at it and went, that looks like a really great controller. We'll go down the panel. What did you guys think of the DualSense controller before we get into the nitty-gritty stuff about technical specs and what we know about it and everything else? We'll start with Benji. What do you think of the DualSense 5, or the DualSense when you saw it?
Yeah, I think my very, very first thought, like the very first thing that pops in my head when I see it is, I did not expect this. You know, I was expecting a DualShock 5. I think that's what pretty much everyone was expecting. Yep. And all of a sudden I see a name change, and then what's really, at least aesthetically, a radically different looking controller. You know, shape still definitely has some DualShock to it, but it just visually, it looks so much different. I was completely, I was completely caught off guard. You know, it has this like future, almost sci-fi vibe to it. And, I'll tell you what, I looked at my DualShock afterwards and I was like, man, this thing looks like ancient now. They actually pulled off that future look. You know, in my opinion, you know, that stuff can come across sometimes as like, I guess like maybe a little cheesy or maybe a little like over designed. I don't think that's the case here. At least for me personally, I love the way it looks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are a few things I really enjoyed just from looking at first is the sticks look a little bit more natural. The controller looks slightly bigger. I don't know if that's going to be true or not, or wherever the case may be. But I just really like the look of it, and what they did with the touchpad and the lighting, I really enjoyed this time around. The only thing I'm not 100% sold on is the built-in microphone, because I'm so used to using headsets and everything now. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm also not sure how I feel about people yelling at me in Warzone through their controller microphone quite yet. But build quality will be essential to that. But no, it's a really sleek, futuristic controller. And that two-tone color, I think, is really cool to see PlayStation take a jab at doing something that's like two-tone. Because we're so used to like the OGs with like the gray color, and then eventually to the black controllers, and to do something two-tone, it's like almost like kicking off the next generation with almost I'm not gonna say a custom controller, but almost it just gives it that nice extra finish feel. It looks like a premium controller to go with a premium console, and I just really like the look of it. Eric, what about you? As a man who has equally as large hands as I do, what did you think of the DualSense controller?
I definitely think for people who kind of found that, they thought the DualShock 4 is a little small. I never really felt that. It always felt comfortable to me. In fact, it's the controller I kind of prefer for action-heavy games like, Sekiro, Devil May Cry, things like that.
Yeah.
It just, for whatever reason, the shoulder buttons feel better, and they don't kill my wrist as much. I don't know what's going on with me in the Xbox controller at times, but it can like give me some like major wrist pain going on. So this looks like it just has, like, for people who have mentioned it, like you, Nick, it has a little bit more real estate down in like a little further down. It looks like they added to that, which is pretty cool. Now, my very first initial impression when I first saw it, and not really reading it, just seeing the picture, I'm like, what is this? I'm thinking immediately it's for the PS4. And I'm like, what is this? Like some odd, scuff-looking PlayStation 4 controller. Then when I finally read, I was like, oh crap, that's the new, like I said, DualShock 5. But then we found out it's the DualSense. But from a look of it, at first I was a little thrown off by like the color scheme, but it kind of went away like pretty fast. The more I looked at it, I'm like, this is pretty dope. Just looking at the design of it as a design, I'm like, it's really sleek. It's got really clean lines. And like you said, I like the fact that they're kind of, pushing forward with like a new look that we're not really used to. And you can definitely see, like, in some of the reaction, gamers aren't always good with change, and things kind of going in a different direction. And you're definitely seeing, it's got like people talking. But I like it. I think it opens up a lot of possibilities for, different colorways and like different looks that they can do on it. And the one thing I did laugh at, I saw a few people saying it looks like a Mad Catz, and I'm like, you guys really don't remember what Mad Catz controllers look like.
I've got a Mad Catz GameCube controller in my closet, and it is probably the ugliest, clunkiest looking thing I've ever seen in my life.
Right. I'm like, no, this doesn't look like a Mad Catz. It looked like it has a pretty solid build quality. Of course, we won't know any of that until we have it like in hand. But it looks good. I like it. And I like this style. Like Benji said, it looks really futuristic. I like the concept of how they're kind of pulling that the all-white Vita look into, like the buttons or whatever, and the D-pad and stuff. Like, that's really cool.
Detroit Become Human, the controller.
Yeah, it looks like something out of Detroit Become Human. I said that too.
Yeah. Jared, what about you?
Oh man, like I can't disagree with you guys. I'm really excited for that look of the controller, because it's so, to me, it's so aesthetically pleasing. It's nice. It's a nice drastic change, but it's not too much of a drastic change from what it used to be. I like the two-tone. It's newer looking. It looks very, not modern, but a little bit more futuristic, kind of further in modern times than what we're kind of looking at right now, sort of thing. Like, I don't know, like 20 years. It's hard to explain how it's like portrayed in my mind, but I really like it. I really enjoy it. I'm excited because I'm not going to be holding on to almost twigs for grips anymore from what it feels like on the DualShock 4. I've been playing a ton of Neo 2, so like when it go back and forth from playing Neo 2 to maybe something winding down on Xbox later in the day, it's really a drastic change from going something that feels comfortable in my hands, like and to something almost small and narrow in with the DualShock 4. Now this seems to solve that issue. Now, what I also like about it is the controller usually always matches the. If this is what the controller looks like, I'm very, very curious to see exactly what the design will be for the PlayStation 5 in general.
Agreed.
So, like, that's my biggest question right now. Like, hey, cool, the controller's cool. No, I don't really care what's behind the controller technology. What does it mean for the PS5? That's my biggest question right now. I want to see that damn thing.
Yeah, that's fair. Sam, what about you?
So I'll go ahead and dive into some of the technology, if you don't mind. Since,
give her.
As well as giving my opinion. I like the overall shape. I have been one of the people who is very vocally critical of the DualShock 4. It gives my hands cramps playing it for long periods of time. The battery on it is atrocious.
Yeah, battery's not good.
I got mine in late 2015. Like, mine is not old. It's a few years old, and the battery barely lasts 2 hours these days. I literally have to charge it 4 times if I'm playing an 8-hour game. It's ridiculous. So they say the battery is a little bit bigger in this one. Should be a little bit better. Really hope so. I'm really, that's the key thing for me. You improve that. You've improved the overall size. I'm not the biggest fan of the dual tone, but the thing is, kind of like Eric said, it opens up the possibility of some cool controllers and some cool customs in the future. So I'm not too worried about it. Like, it's fine. I'll get over it. Like Jared said, I'm curious about what the console is going to look like as a result. Does that mean the console is two-tone, like white, but also some black?
I think so.
The DualShocks have always matched, the PlayStation. So
yeah,
it seems like it. That's interesting to me. But the biggest thing for me is, like I said, battery, and then how does it actually feel in my hand? It looks like it'll be better, but I need to actually know that it'll be better. I want to get my hands on it.
Yeah, absolutely, and like, it'll be a win for Sony is if they actually make me use a DualShock controller, because as everyone knows, I run a Chrono Stick through my PS4, so I can use my Elite V2 through my PS4. I don't use a DualShock 4 while I'm playing on PlayStation, because, as Sam said, the hand cramping is what gets me. My hands cramp on my Nintendo Switch, my hands cramp on the DualShock 4, and it pains me because I played PlayStation 3 religiously for the first 2 years of its launch, and there was nothing worse than the launch PS3 controller ever.
I go back. I'm like, now that one, Nick. I go back. I'm like, how did I play with this?
Man, I was at my EB Games before all this COVID stuff went down, and they had like a PS3 controller out, and I was like, how did I play Killzone with this at all? Like, how did I use this? So Sam, some of the technical aspects of the controller, what really stood out for you in terms of what they're doing differently than, say, the DualShock 4?
I think that, much like Jared said, the shape of the controller and the color of the controller leads into what the shape of the console. I think the immersion factor of the controller is going to lead into the immersion factor of the console. As far back as the Wired interviews in April and September, it was September or October, we got 2 Wired interviews. Can't remember when the second one is. Point is, we got 2 of them. They talked about the controller, and they talked about, the tensile feedback, the haptics, the improved technology, where it's not just the rumble, it's tension coils and making the triggers stick. So, drawing a bow back feels more natural. I think that's going to be interesting because not all developers are naturally going to take advantage of it. Third parties probably aren't going to use it, but for Sony's first parties, for worldwide studios, that's going to be really cool to see what they can come up with. And it goes back to the whole thing about what did Sony choose to focus on for the PS5? It was the SSD above all else. They seem to be going for an immersion factor of, we make big experiences, we make big blockbuster games, right? And we want you to feel as immersed and in the world as possible. Everything Mark Cerny talked about with 3D audio and the Tempest engine and what they're doing there, I think they want people to feel immersed in the game and more comfortable with it. I'm curious how that's going to work. I have talked to some people who have some concerns about accessibility and the triggers possibly giving them problems, and can that be turned off? And if it can be turned
Mm.
off, does that mean even more developers aren't going to use it? I don't know. I simply bring it up because I've heard it. Those are questions I have. But I think for the developers who do take advantage of it, it's going to provide more memorable experiences.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest fan of the integrated mic. I'm going to be honest with you on that one. I don't know. That feels... I feel like there is a point where you're over-engineering stuff, but I digress. That's just me.
It's so funny to look back on how things have changed over the years, because like if you had pitched a integrated microphone into a controller in 2013, you would probably be nailed to the wall.
Mm.
But now with things like Alexa in our homes and everything else, everyone's so much more open to this technology. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just interesting to see how fast we've accepted that type of technology into our households now. And I always thought it was kind of silly, because I remember everyone, like with the Xbox Kinect back in 2013, everyone was like, well, Microsoft could see me playing games. And I'm like, well, yeah, and like Microsoft could also hear me through my microphone that's plugged into my controller. So
not even that, but I was always like, you have a phone sitting next to you, don't you?
yeah, like
That thing's been watching and listening to you for a long time.
I lived in a family where my mom would duct tape over every webcam that was in the house, because she was like, they want to know what we're doing. I'm like, you mean sitting around watching Netflix all the time? But yeah, it's a really great design controller, and I'm really excited to get my hands on it. And like, if they literally the only reason I don't use a DualShock 4 is because my DualShock 4 its battery life lasts like 2 hours now. And when I went to look into replacing it, it was going to cost me $80 Canadian to replace it. Or I could get a Chronos adapter to use my Xbox or my mouse and keyboard for $50. So it was like a toss-up of what am I going to do. So I just ended up opting out to do it that way. But I'm really excited for this. I'm really excited what the console's going to look like with this. Like, I want to see that console. I need to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
But
hey, I want to say like too before we like move forward, because I know like a lot of people are talking about the mic like being built into it, and a lot of people are saying they're immediately going to a multiplayer thought process about it. And I'm like, I don't really think anybody's going to use the mic for their multiplayer. They'll still use their headphones. But being to the fact that it doesn't have the light bar anymore, but you can see that the light is still integrated in there. And I know that's a huge part of PSVR. I started wondering, is the mic going to be used more for like VR experiences and stuff?
Well, I think I remember seeing Jez Corden tweet something about this, and he was theorizing that it's more to use like an AI system, so you could be like, PlayStation Play The Last of Us Part 2. And the big thing that Sony is really marketing with the PlayStation 5 is seamless and immersion. So to make something seamless and immersion, how more seamless can you be than to pick up your controller, sit down on your couch, and go, PlayStation, play The Last of Us Part 2, and it instantly boots up because of that SSD.
I 100% think that's part of the OS.
Yeah, I do
think that is. Yeah.
Like, I just think that's what they're aiming for, because like that's what we were teased with in 2013 with like the Kinect. It delivered to a certain degree, but not in the way that it could have, and it never really got the support and integration that it needed to be successful with that. So I'm really interested to see if that's the approach Sony's taking, and if they are, that's really cool. Unless my daughter figures out how to turn on my PlayStation randomly.
And she will.
Yeah, she will. She likes messing around with my mom's Alexa, so it's only a matter of time. But we got some Cyberpunk 2077 news, so I will hand that off to obviously our biggest CD Projekt Red fan on the panel, which I don't know who that could be, the guy with the Witcher profile picture for the past 4 years. Sam!
You're still just jealous because I got to see it last year at E3. Is that it?
Yes.
Fair enough. I get that. Yeah, so CD Projekt Red had a financial call recently. There was a lot of little bits of information, some interesting tidbits. The nutshell version, there's two important things. And the first one here is they're very bullish that Cyberpunk 2077 is going to remain on track for the September release date. They're insisting it's going to happen. They said the game is content complete and has been content complete for the past couple of weeks. It's been submitted to be rated because nothing is changing at this point. They're just polishing it. They're just polishing it, fixing bugs, doing some more polish and more bug fixes on top of that, which is nice. They have a really long time to polish up, and that's really good. Many studios don't get that kind of opportunity. So here's the question. How do I put this? Compared to some other games that got delayed recently, like The Last of Us Part 2 and Iron Man VR, which now have no release date, it's been indefinitely delayed, CD Projekt Red seems bullish that they're going to hit this. Now, I think there's a couple of different factors there. This is a multi-platform game, not a PlayStation 4 exclusive, not a console exclusive. It's going to hit multiple platforms. And on top of that, CD Projekt Red's biggest audience is PC. PC is digital only. And I think we can't overlook that they can afford to have the physical copies perhaps spread out a little bit. And I think on top of that, they're weighing the fact that maybe shipping lanes are going to be a little clearer around September. That's my thought process, but I really want to hear what Benji has to say about this.
Yes, you are actually spot on the money. I think you're 100% correct on that. That is really what makes Cyberpunk different than, let's say, The Last of Us, is because CD Projekt Red's, like you said, their biggest audience, the place they do the most sales on, is on PC. And like you said, PC is fully digital. So don't get me wrong, Cyberpunk's going to sell huge on console. The Witcher sold great on consoles, but their biggest, the biggest chunk of the money they're going to receive is going to be from PC. And if you remember, through platforms like GOG, they get 100% of the money from that. So that I think is the number one biggest issue. Like you said, also maybe by September, things are a little bit more cleaned up. And I also think a factor for The Last of Us Part 2's delay specifically is emerging markets, which Sony has become very strong in. That kind of goes underreported. Places like the Middle East and other places like this where physical is still very strong. You look at countries like the US and the UK, and countries like that have really switched over to heavy digital. But some of these emerging markets are still very physically dominated. So a game like The Last of Us, I think if you don't delay that game and you just do a digital launch, I've seen a lot of people, talk about just launch The Last of Us digitally. I think you lose millions of sales on that game doing that. Yeah. And I think Cyberpunk's a little different. I think Cyberpunk, like you were saying, since PC's so heavy on it, if you lose a little bit of physical sales, it doesn't hurt you as much as I think it would hurt The Last of Us.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. Like as you said, emerging markets. Everyone doesn't realize how much like PlayStation has taken hold in like areas like the Middle East, Eastern Europe. Like the sales numbers for PlayStation 4 in Europe are still astronomically higher than any other region, month to month, week to week. So yeah, it's a huge part of what it is, and it doesn't surprise me CD Projekt Red is bullish on this. As from what I've heard from a few friends and everything else, they're very confident in this game. They've been polishing it already for months, so it doesn't surprise me that they're not stepping away from that release date. It'll be very interesting to see if everything launches on time, though. Is like how is our distribution going to be reshaped by this, and how fast is the games market going to be able to recover? Like how fast are we going to be able to start distributing things like games media again through the proper channels? Is it going to take weeks, months? Only time will tell on that. Now there was a little bit about DLC and whatnot, which we'll dive into, but Eric and Jared, anything in terms of the distribution of this game? Like, would you guys have any problem waiting for this game if you guys have physical copies pre-ordered? Because I can't remember out of all of us if any of us have the collector's edition pre-ordered as it stands right now.
Wouldn't bother me.
No, wouldn't bother me either.
Yeah, it wouldn't bother me. Like, honestly, if you're excited to wait for if you're excited for a game and you're willing to wait, just you're gonna end up waiting no matter what. And especially if you're really like a big collector as well. A physical library collector or collector editions sort of thing, you're gonna wait, right? So yeah, I don't have much.
Yeah, and I think it's just that place that we're in. Even if there wasn't like this pandemic going on, I mean that is a big thing to kind of worry about. So you kind of feel like shitty if you're like bitching that a game is going to be delayed or what the case may be. But then the flip side of that is, I think everybody here can agree, there's always a game waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of like, okay, that gives me more time to do this before this one comes. You know, so that's just me. I know people do get upset over these things, but I don't tend to.
I mean, show of hands if you haven't been complaining about your backlog and how many
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Stan, we've said it before. I feel relief when a game gets like pushed back. I'm like, oh, okay, you know, that gives me some time.
And here's the other thing: how many people are going to wait anyways because this game comes out in September, next gen in November?
That's the other thing.
Good point.
You know,
Mhm.
that's one
Especially when,
thing.
like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's just one thing I'm very curious to watch with those September games, Avengers, Cyberpunk. I am very curious to see how many people wait and buy those games instead in November, whenever the new consoles launch, because you know, I don't think games that are coming out right now, games that like Ghost of Tsushima, that's in June, you know, I don't think those games really are in any danger of being impacted by it. But I mean, we're talking 2 months before next gen. I'm curious. You know, I'm not saying that there's gonna be for sure a bunch of people that wait. I don't think we really know yet, but I am curious. I'm curious how many people are like, I'm just gonna wait an extra 2 months and play this. You know, hopefully with a day one patch for next gen with better visuals. You know, that's the vibe I'm getting. Is that Cyberpunk probably is gonna have that patch day one. They've already talked about how, you know, with Microsoft Smart Delivery, that if you buy it on the Xbox One, you're automatically going to have the enhanced Series X version. That implies to me that patch is probably going to be ready pretty quick. So I wonder. I'm just curious about that.
I mean, like, it's a great thing to wonder because, like, I'm even doing that with some games that are just in my backlog. Like, I purposefully bought Control to go, I'm a wait for next gen for this because of the few little bit of performance issues. I'm like, this game will be amazing on next generation consoles. And I'm doing the same thing with, like, Metro Exodus because I know from looking at the PC version, I'm like, whoa, ray tracing on that's really great. So I'd love to see that on PS5 or Xbox Series X. So if I'm doing that with games I already own, there's a really great chance that people are going to hold off on buying new games for that exact reason.
Yeah, that's true. Personally, I'm definitely going to be playing it twice for sure. Once on launch, like, because I have that play it on the Xbox One X, play it through on launch day, and then as soon as the Series X patch comes out, play it again because I'd like to see the difference as well from playing it from the two times, and it's gonna look so good. Just imagine that game with ray tracing in general. Like, I'm just gonna leave it at that. It's gonna look so good.
There's a ton of games that I really am interested in PS5, Xbox Series X. Even if I just boot them up for even half an hour just to take a look, like Final Fantasy VII Remake is gonna be one on PS5. Oh,
yeah.
I think Doom Eternal, with how good the HDR was in that one, I'm really interested to see if there's ray tracing in that and everything else. There's a ton of great games that people are going to go back to or wait to buy. It's just a really interesting situation we're in. Like, this upcoming generation couldn't get any more weird and against the grain if it tried.
Yeah, the build-up's been very strange.
Yeah.
I actually argue, Benji, I've told these guys, I'll tell you right now, I think it's the most interesting lead-up to a console generation we've ever had, in terms of how much we simply don't know. And I've never seen Microsoft and Sony play so possum with each other. Like, it's so funny because it's like some of this stuff's always kind of gone on behind the scenes and stuff, but like when you're having executives just openly saying stuff like, hey, we want to wait, announce your price, I want to see what yours is first. You
show me yours.
It's like it's so funny.
Third parties are tapping their fingers like, come on, come on,
so
you got to show.
I can speak on this a little bit. I have talked to a couple people that have worked at third parties, and people want to talk. So I'm curious how long they can hold this out for. You know, Phil even hinted at it in that Unlocked interview, really briefly. You know, whenever they were talking to him, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm ready to talk about first party games." And then I think his direct quote was, "And frankly, so are third party." He's talking about that for a reason. The pressure is on, and you know, these marketing cycles got to start kicking up. So I'm very curious how long we're in this somewhat stalemate position where no one's really ready. Like, we're getting little hints and tidbits, and it's like no one's ready to just fully pull that trigger and go. And I'm curious how long this holdout's going to last.
Yeah, because like there's only like you pointed out on Twitter, and I actually booted up my PlayStation 4 and looked. There's only like 4 or 5 games up for pre-order in fall. Like there's nothing right now. So like we know Ubisoft's got an Assassin's Creed game that's going to be a launch title, but they have not talked about it at all yet. So it's like, where's that going to land?
I tweeted about that earlier. I think there's a total of 6 games on PlayStation Network right now, and 2 of them come out in September, Avengers and Cyberpunk. So there is literally 4 games you can pre-order right now on PlayStation between now and September. That is crazy.
It's not much better on Xbox either. It's really not much better at all.
It's a weird buildup. It's very strange. Because, I mean, a lot of these third-party games are going to be cross-gen at launch, but they can't start the marketing cycle until Sony and Microsoft give the green light. So it's like just this very strange position right now.
Nintendo's like, you want some ports? Here's some ports.
Right. Yeah, but you know what the problem is when Nintendo's like, hey, you want these ports? And I'm like, yep, give them to me. I'll pay $60 for them. Just hand them to me. Like, people do not understand that Mario pack, or whether it's sold individually, is going to be the best-selling software outside of maybe, like, Call of Duty and a few others. Like, if they re-release Mario 64 and Mario Sunshine and everything else, that's, like, 10 million copies each. Like, whether they sell each game individually for 60 or a dual pack for 60, take that to the bank. Nintendo's just, like...
Easy.
Nintendo defies all logic to me. Like, I literally look at my feed, and there'll be like a $40 remaster for a game on Xbox or PlayStation. People are like, that's not really worth my money. It's just an HD remake. That's just not really worth my money at this point in time. But man, do people love $60 HD ports on the Switch. And I can't even say anything because I'm just as bad for buying them.
But like, I was just going to say, like, the thing they have going for them, though, is that the gameplay is worth the $60 because the gameplay is just as good back then as it is today.
Yeah, I mean, games are timeless. That's the thing.
Yeah, the Switch is crazy. It is quite literally, without exaggeration, has ever pushed first-party software like the Switch ever in history. Ever. No console ever. No PlayStation, no Xbox, and no Nintendo console has pushed like the Switch. It's insane.
Wow.
Amazing.
It's mind-blowing. Every single time they release a new game, it just shatters the franchise records for those games. It's honestly mind-blowing.
Thank you, all Father Reggie, for doing this for people.
And they can literally do it like over and over because like when the Zelda anniversary hits, and Sam will tell you, we're already like, give us that Wind Waker, give us that Twilight Princess, and we're there. We're in line.
I'm already broke, but I'll give you my kidney. I mean,
you know, people are still waiting on that Metroid Prime port.
Oh, damn right. Freaking right I am.
That port will never come out as long as John from STGC keeps tweeting about it. As long as it's never coming out.
Is that who I have to pick a fight with?
I heard that thing is done. Is that just a bogus rumor, or because that's what I've heard even behind the scenes? That thing is done and has been done for a long time.
Here's what I'll say, Benji. Here's what I'll say. I don't usually like talking about, rumors without a lot of verification, but multiple people I trust say that is a Modern Warfare 2 remastered situation where it's been done.
Yeah,
they're
same.
sitting on it and they're waiting to release it sometime. It's like, guys, hello. Can we have
what?
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because I'm the same way, Samuel. Like, I don't like to talk about rumors without a lot of validation, but I've heard the same thing from several people that it is straight up a finished game.
I want to cry.
I've heard from a couple of people I've talked to that generally give decent information that basically Nintendo's saving it for a rainy day. I'm like, well, what's a rainy day for the Switch? They're selling
Now is a rainy day. Damn it, release the damn thing. Come on. I've been dying to get my hands on Metroid Prime for so long, not just the new one, but even the trilogy remaster. I am such a big fan. Give it to me.
Nah, I think they're probably gonna realistically they're gonna sit on that remaster until they have something to show for 4. I think. I think they'll be like, here's a trailer for 4, and here's the remastered trailer.
Yeah,
that's probably what they're gonna do.
Yeah,
and
here it is to tide you over until 4 comes out, basically. Yeah.
But Sam,
Bastards.
there was a little bit more from CD Projekt Red, and it was in terms to DLC for Cyberpunk. Can you expand on that a little?
Yes. So in the Q&A investor call, they were asked about, what are the DLC plans, expansions, post-launch support, et cetera, and they said that they can't give any specifics quite yet, but that people can expect that Cyberpunk 2077 will be getting at least as much DLC as The Witcher 3 did. And for context, if you are somehow one of these people who didn't play The Witcher 3, and I'm very disappointed in you if that's the case, it got 16 free pieces of DLC, which were like different skins, weapon packs, missions, things like that, and then 2 giant expansion packs. Hearts of Stone, which is about 10 to 12 hours long, and then Blood and Wine, which honestly should have been called Witcher 3.5, because it's huge.
It's huge.
It's one of the biggest expansions in the last several years. So the point is, post-launch support for Cyberpunk, which is already going to be a big game, is looking very bright. Very few in the industry do it like CD Projekt Red. Honestly, they're in the top tier.
Yep, I agree 100%.
Yep.
Yeah, no one is doing RPGs quite like they are right now, and it's really impressive to watch. Because I've always been really impressed with, how do I word this without, Eastern European? Could we call it that, Sam? Eastern European or Euro RPGs, maybe? We'll call it that?
Sure.
Slavic.
Yeah, like things like Kingdom Come Deliverance, Witcher 3, a lot of these like Slavic, Eastern European studios are doing some really interesting things in the RPG space. And I really hope that some of the Western RPG developers, cough, cough, BioWare, cough, cough, Bethesda, start paying attention to what these guys are doing, because they're doing some really unique things. And I think there's still a lot of work that can be done and expanded on in the RPG genre.
Agreed.
And it'll be even better with how immersive Next Generation's shaping up to be, so I'm really interested in that. But speaking of things that are immersive and activations and whatnot, we gotta talk about E3. Or the lack thereof, I guess. So, as everyone knows that's been following this show, a lot of us on here have been critical of E3, more importantly the ESA. Sam especially, because, his information was leaked. And the ESA never thought it was relevant to ever compensate or even admit that that was a bad thing that happened. So, safe to say there's a little bit of animosity towards the ESA, but the ESA has been on probably one of the most interesting down spirals I've ever seen from a public company in terms of how they've been doing things. So roughly about 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago, they announced the official dates for E3 2021 without talking about E3 2020 digital dates. Because there was supposed to be a digital E3 2020 featuring a bunch of big publishers, Xbox, etc. And they weren't really talking about this. But then out of nowhere, so they confirmed E3 2021 dates, but then they came out and said that the ESA officially won't be holding an online event for E3 2020. And they didn't really state a reason why. They said that given the disruption brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic, we'll no longer be presenting an E3 2020 event in June. Instead, we'll be working with exhibitors to promote and showcase individual company announcements, including on www.e3expo.com. So it almost sounds like they're like, you do your own shows and we'll give you a friendly retweet, is almost why it comes across like. Do you guys really think E3 2021 is going to happen at this rate when all these publishers realize how much money they'll save by not doing E3?
IGN said, hold my beer.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I think if IGN takes takes these guys out, shows them a good time, treats them nice. It's gonna be a divorce from E3 completely.
Yeah.
I think it's like, yeah, because it's kind of like treating somebody like the ugly girl at the dance. You know, and you're not making it better. Like you're acting like an a-hole, and you show up with like some wilted flowers. You know.
Yeah, and I think one thing that people always overlook. I know IGN gets a lot of flack from people on social media. Some deserve, some a lot undeserved. But one thing I've always said about IGN is they have incredible hosting talent. In terms of people like Ryan McCaffrey, Rand Sanchez, a bunch of people in IGN are super talented hosts, Brian Altano, etc. So they could really pull off this, I'm not going to call it E3, but it's E3 type deal that IGN's doing. And I think it could definitely take out the legs from underneath the ESA. What do you think, Benji? Do you think the ESA has a chance with E3 2021, or...
Yeah, this is a fascinating question. And this is something I've been wondering about myself too, because it's like, on one hand, E3 is extremely expensive. That is one of the reasons you've seen certain parties sort of exit E3. Cost is definitely a factor of that. There's been other things as well, but to go in and put on these massive shows, I mean, you're talking huge money, flying, all these employees out there to work it, setting up the booths. I mean, it's a giant expense. It's something that made a ton of sense, let's say 10 years ago, whenever instant streaming into your household was coming online, but it wasn't like as widespread as it is now. Like basically, anyone anywhere just about can pull up a YouTube stream, whether that's at home on your computer or it's just directly from your cell phone. It's become so much easier to just directly get that messaging to the people that want to see it. So it's like, on one hand, you ask yourself, do you really need E3? The counterpoint is that, I still think there is some value to getting the industry together, to getting everyone together. A lot of deals are made at E3. There's a lot of exchanging for media and things like this. So I'm kind of two thoughts of it. I think that basically probably E3 is never going to be what it was ever again. I really do believe that. I think the days of E3 being the dominant show, that everyone shows up to and the world tunes in for, I think that's probably over. I think E3 2021 might happen, but it'll probably be just definitely at a much smaller scope. You were already seeing it. E3 was already declining, and then you had all this go on. I do think you'll see the show shrink, but probably still go on next year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's certainly fair. That's certainly fair. Given if I can chime in here, being as someone who has been to E3 3 times. I went 2017, 2018, and 2019. So I realize I'm somewhat biased because I like going to preview events. I like going to big shows. I like meeting people because that's the only time I get to talk to my friends, who are in the UK or in Europe or on the other side of America. That's the only time I get to talk to them in person. I'll never have another chance to do it. So I appreciate that. But Benji is 100% correct here. The fact of the matter is there are deals made on the show floor of E3 that save studios, that save indie devs. Maybe not if indie devs as much as GDC, but it does happen. It definitely happens. That's where a lot of industry contacts get exchanged and people meet people to form the next big thing. And another thing that I've seen is that, why can't they just do digital preview events? That's a complaint I've heard from people. You can, but it's not the same thing. There are ways to do digital previews and downloads. They actually did a digital preview for Gears Tactics. Xbox did recently, which was very interesting how they handled that instead of having an actual event to fly to because all travel is shut down. But at the same time, in a closed-door environment, you as a developer or as a publisher have control over the demo. You can just tell people, okay, all right, put the controller down now. All right, we're done here. Or you can expect a journalist to understand, hey, this is buggy. It's not finished yet. We're showing you this years ahead of when it's going to release. I'm just going to be blunt. The general public cannot be trusted with that.
100% correct.
Yeah.
See also why people reacted to the Avengers footage that leaked the way they did. That's 100% why. And, then also the fact that if they release a demo, guess what? It's going to be data mined. The demo for Final Fantasy VII Remake was data mined to hell and back before it even came out, before it was even publicly available for people. So call me a fossil, call me a dinosaur, but I do think there is still a kernel of value to in-person meetings that can never be replaced. You will never be able to truly take it over. With that in mind, again, Benji is correct. Not everyone is going to be of that opinion, and many publishers are just going to say, well, we're saving enough money. We'll deal with it. So, I know that's a two-faced answer, but that is what it is.
Yeah, and I'm a little... I'm not going to say biased, but I'm a little leaning on one side because, of course, as someone who works in non-professional games media, writes for a fan site, and wants to continue to expand contacts and everything else, E3 was one of those areas where you were kind of treated equal with everyone else, where you could kind of get shoulder to shoulder with people that worked at like IGN, Kotaku, and you could like talk with developers like CD Projekt Red, and like from the time that me and Sam worked at Tick together, some of the opportunities that presented themselves and some of the contacts we were able to talk to because of situations of Sam being at E3 and getting meetings and everything else, it was a huge boost to what we did at the time. And it's really sad as someone who works in the smaller side of the industry that those kind of events aren't going to be accessible for people like myself anymore. Is like PAX is still going to be great and everything else, but E3 was kind of that thing where like even a small site like the one I'm part of, you could get a preview of a game and get hands-on with it. Like no one's flying me out to preview their game at this point. But E3 was kind of like this magical place where you could meet people you looked up to, people in the industry, and make contacts. And it was just held a magical vibe to it for so long. And it really makes me sad that I never got to experience that due to back-to-back issues through 2018 and 2019. And then with everything going on 2020, rolling out the way it did. But I just don't see E3 2021 being something I'm going to want to go to, depending on what kind of situation it's in. I don't know. Eric, Jared, do you think there's much appeal for an E3 2021 if they can't get the heavy hitters anymore? Because like, the fact of the matter is like Nintendo technically bowed out at E3 years ago. Sony clearly has no interest for obvious reasons. And Xbox...
Yeah, they're never going back. Sony's never going back.
Sony's never going back. And Xbox has practically been bowed out. They've basically just been like, yeah, we're doing E3, but we're across the street, basically. So they'll probably bow out.
It was separate from how the ESA technically handled stuff.
Yeah.
No, I'll tell you, no, without the heavy hitters, as me being there as a fan and not like for business or media or anything like that, I would probably like bow out of actually going and kind of focus on going to a different fan focused event like a PAX or something.
Mm-hmm.
And
I feel like PAX is growing, right? So I feel like
it seems like there's a lot more interest around, going into the various PAX around the country throughout the year, So I'd probably put my focus more toward that. And again, it would, of course, depend on what they present. But, where before it was always like, I got to get to an E3. I want to definitely do that. And I'm definitely bummed that didn't happen because there were definitely people I wanted to meet finally and see face to face and actually, cross it off the bucket list. But who knows? I don't know what the future of it's going to be, what it's going to look like. But yeah, if it's not hosting, some of the heavy hitters, I don't see me going there.
Yeah, I'm kind of inclined to be in the same train of thought, basically, because like if someone has never been to E3 but who has wanted to go, if I don't have like the main reason I'd want to go is to see like what PlayStation and Xbox have in store and deal with those events and those experiences, and then everything else kind of would be like the cherry on top sort of thing. But I kind of don't really see that same experience being able to be replicated again after everything that has happened recently. At the same token, I really think with this whole IGN digital live event that's going to be happening at the start of June and happening throughout most of that month, it's really going to take a lot of the wind out of the sails for E3. And not just that, but I still have a strong feeling, like I've mentioned in a previous episode here on the Gaming Perspective, I still think Jeff Keighley might pull something out.
and because he's always been actively wanting to grow his show, make it bigger, better than the year before, and try new things, be innovative, and just bring new experiences to fans. And I do think after this little fall for E3, I actually should say little fall, it's a big damn fall for them. I do think if IGN is extremely successful with their digital event, and if Jeff Keighley still goes strong with an incredible show over at the Video Game Awards, and then somehow turns that to a place where developers and companies can actually have that show floor kind of meeting space or meeting times that they would need at E3, but they can now have it somewhere else and not have to depend on just E3 anymore. So I think Jeff Keighley might focus a lot on that this year. Hard to say because it happens at the end of the year. So we still have a long time to wait. But I think E3 2021 not going to be the same. I doubt they'll be at 2022 or 2023. I really do. We'll see what happens, but I'm not really too optimistic for the survival of E3 at this point.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you with Jeff Keighley because we still don't know. I'm still waiting for the. I know Jason Schreier's got to have a piece brewing somewhere in his pocket about why Jeff Keighley pulled out of E3. Because, as everyone knows, he announced that he was uncomfortable with the event and didn't feel it was proper, so he pulled out. I want to know what made Jeff Keighley run from E3. That's what I really want to know.
And yeah, there's something going on, and not just that, but he's such a fan. Like his excitement is almost palpable, and you can tell. No matter what games and what platform, really, in the end, he's just excited for games in general. And it's hard to have someone have such a large platform like he does to have the ability to even give big companies a large platform to speak on. Right? There's not really many. I would say even individuals, because it's really mostly just him and a board of people, but it's really his baby. So props to him for really creating something so massive in such a short period of time. Like 5 years now, and it's doubled almost every year.
Yeah, stealthily behind the scenes, Keighley's probably the most connected person in the industry.
Exactly. So
I don't care what you think of him. I love the man. I love the work he's done. But he has turned the Game Awards into the most successful award show on the planet. It outdoes the Oscars. It outdoes everything else.
It's huge.
Put some respect on that man's name.
Exactly.
Yeah, and with that, and I was going to say with Sam saying that's kind of what I was going to say. I'm just taking a stab at it without really knowing anything. I just think his thing has become so big that I won't even say he's looking at his competition. He's probably just so busy getting all that together. It's just grown so much that, yeah, like Sam, we talked about it in one of the other shows. Like when he's done with this one, he has like a couple weeks off and he's off to get ready for this year. So it's probably like, I can't focus on doing this other stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I think too with Jeff Keighley, and like we're talking the Game Awards, like people are always said like, oh, the Game Awards can't really do like huge announcements. No developer or publisher's going to do a huge announcement through the Game Awards. Xbox did their next generation console for Jeff Keighley's Game Awards. That throws any rule book out the door.
You're a made man at that point, and it's kind of that thing. It's like that's the kind of thing that used to happen at an E3. When that's now happening on your show, you're kind of a bigger deal than E3.
Exactly my point.
So, yeah, excellent point, man.
Yeah, and like I know everyone makes fun of Jeff Keighley, and I don't understand it. I love Jeff Keighley because this is a guy who just loves video games, that it fell into his lap that he gets to associate with all these developers and everything. And like he always is having such a great time, but still permanently looks exhausted.
He started out making documentaries for E3 for 15, 20 years or whatever.
Yeah, I've been a fan of Keighley since the G4 days, man. You know, the guy's always had like that passion and that grind, you know. Like you said, he catches a lot of like flag and people like to goof on him, but I'm like, I'll say it again, man. I know people like to goof on him about the Kojima thing, but I'm like, think about somebody you grew up idolizing and loving their work and loving their games, and you actually got to become best friends with that person.
Yeah, damn right.
How many of us wouldn't like geek out when you're around them? You get to be a fanboy and a best friend.
Is that Cory Barlog? Like, oh my
You know?
Yeah, basically, Corey stopped responding to my emails, so it is what it is.
Shoot.
But no, it'll be interesting to see how E3 shapes up going forward. And we got a little bit of a smaller spin-off topic. I don't think this is necessarily a big deal. People like to run with it. That was a big deal. But last week, obviously, Naughty Dog announced that Last of Us Part 2 was delayed. But then a bunch of people started freaking out when PlayStation canceled and begun issuing refunds for all their digital pre-orders. Now, there's a little bit of nuance to that. It's in the fact that I believe it's in the PlayStation Store's terms of services, is that if a game doesn't have a release date on it, they're not allowed to take your money for it. That's why if you
That's right. It needs at least a release window.
Yeah. So like that's why you'll see games you can pre-order on the you can pre-order a game on the PlayStation Store, but the release date will be like December 31st, 2020. Because it has a date, but it's not really a date. But since they're so up in the air with this, they had to pull the pre-orders and issue refunds. But my real question for you guys, because they did just slap a end of year 2020 date on it to keep it on the store, do you guys think this could potentially get pushed back further than people are anticipating?
I have an opinion, but I want to hear what Benji has to say first.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I have two minds on it. I definitely have very much two minds on it. So part of me is like, okay, if it's really just about physical copies and about shipping and things like that, which, you know, I'm inclined to believe what they're saying, that I would think that would be mostly cleared up by the time you hit late summer. You're already seeing China come back online. You know, you're already seeing some markets start to do that. So we're still in a rough ride for months with that going on. So I totally get why late May would have gotten pushed off. But I would think, you know, once you hit that August time frame, you should be doable. I would be shocked if the world is still in a state in August that you couldn't put a game into stores, because you still are having games hit stores right now, like Final Fantasy and Resident Evil. Those physical games are out. So, you know, obviously Final Fantasy was impacted. You saw delays, things like that. But I'm saying, like, right now in the worst time, it's still technically doable, though it's rough. So I would think by August, things should be in a better spot. So part of me thinks, hey, this is probably like a July or August release now, because they're saying the game's done. So technically speaking, I think you could get it out then. I think June's not going to happen because Ghost is there, and I don't think Ghost is getting pushed back. You know, they didn't announce that. So I think they're thinking that they're still going to be able to get Ghost out and then put The Last of Us right afterwards. So I could see a July or August. But then I look at it, and financially, where does it pay off best? Because you have this as an indefinite delay. You have it as no time frame right now. Do you launch it with PlayStation 5? You know, part of me wonders. Some people would get very frustrated at that. Some people would get very angry about that because it's quite a long delay after The Last of Us has already been delayed before. And actually, this game was actually slated internally, not publicly, but internally to come out last year. They were targeting an October release date. So it's been pushed a lot. This game has been severely pushed. So part of me is like, you know, the fan base might get really mad if this gets pushed back that far. But also I could see it just being huge at launch on PS5. We saw what happened with Breath of the Wild launching on Switch and Wii U at the same time, and it just catapulted it to complete insanity. One of the craziest things I've ever seen. Breath of the Wild sold more copies on Switch launch month than the Switch sold consoles. That's right. The Switch version of the game sold more units than Switch sold consoles because people were so excited to play it on the Switch. And they couldn't get a Switch, but they still bought the game anyways for when they could get a Switch.
Oh my God.
Yes, that actually happened.
Like,
So part of me is like, man, I could see this just being, you know, giant at the PS5 launch. But at the same time, if the game truly is basically done, like they're saying, you know, if I had to gamble, if I had to bet on it, I'm thinking late summer. If I just had to pick still, I still think to avoid maybe some bad PR, they put this out in like August. but I wouldn't be shocked, I would say, if it gets delayed all the way to PS5. But don't expect it before then. I would be shocked if this came out in June, because I think they're sticking with Ghost in June. So I'm thinking August.
Yeah, and
My
also,
question,
like,
Benji. I'm sorry, Sam.
sorry, go, no, go ahead, Darren, please.
No, I was just gonna say. Well, Sam, you might be getting ready to hit on this, because my question is gonna be, well, why are they canceling the pre-orders on PSN if it's still apparently gonna hit? That's kind of odd, because I mean, it's still, if it's gonna hit this year, people are still set to pre-order, right?
Yeah, that has been the other weird question about it. Is the wording they used? It was indefinite, right? They didn't give hey, this is fall. Hey, this is summer.
Yeah.
Indefinite. The whole thing is weird. It's very weird. It's very extremely rare that you see a game in any way, shape, or form delayed without at least a release window. You know, you almost never see this. Almost never. You know, you'll see games, hey, we're delayed off this date to now fall. You know, they won't give you a date, but they'll give you a time frame. The wording and the verbiage here, I agree, is very interesting. Using that indefinite term is one of the things that makes me wonder if this is pushed to PS5 launch. You know, that is one thing that's making me. I don't think it's next year. You know, I've seen some people panic and be like, I don't think that's coming this year at all. I don't agree with that, because I think the PS5 is still definitely going to come out this year. Sony seemed dead set on it, and so did Microsoft on the Xbox. So I really do think that's still going to happen. But yeah, the indefinite thing is weird. I agree. It's very strange. It's very strange to do the refund, to do no time framing of date. You could say maybe it's because COVID, but I would still think, I mean, even companies that have delayed because of that have given new dates, even in the movies, right? You've seen movies delayed and they've redated them. So it is strange. The indefinite terminology here is very strange.
Yeah,
and Benji, sort of building on what you're saying there, and this kind of is the second half of, I think, what you were asking, Eric. The problem is, okay, if that's the case, if you didn't think you could make it to the point that you're saying it's an indefinite delay, why do you think you can hit Ghost of Tsushima not even a month later? Like, it's not even a month later. It's like 28 days.
Yeah, I know.
Later. So you really think it's going to be that much of a difference there? Is Ghost actually going to get pushed back? I don't know. I'm just pushing, the thoughts I have in my head out there. It's a very strange time. It
is, especially with the reports that have come out. You know, there's been some discussion on the validity of some of these reports about what goes on internally at Naughty Dog. I can say, and I don't think this is a shock to anyone that even casually follows the gaming industry, they are notoriously known for basically some of the worst crunch in the industry. It's been known forever.
Yeah,
this isn't new news. You know, the whole pieces that came out. This has been known for years. They have horrific crunch. And there, you always hear the thing thrown around, hey, all of gaming has crunch. Well, Naughty Dog's crunch is known as legendary crunch. That's severe. That even the people that crunch are like, I don't want to be Naughty Dog.
I'm sorry, but now I'm thinking of like the purple and orange tiers of like, you get rare crunch, but then you get your legendary.
So they are very well known for this. So I don't want to say there's anything going wrong with the game. You know, I have seen some people say that is it the timing of the virus, and also maybe some things were going on with the game as well, and that's just all tying together to cause this delay. I can't speak to that at all. I have no idea the state of it. But it is weird. It is very weird to push that indefinite, then say nothing about Ghost. It's strange. I definitely agree that I have not seen a situation quite like this with a game, really, because like I said, even games that get majorly pushed back, a lot of times you're just like, hey, we're missing this window. Now we're fall of this year or whatever. To go the indefinite route, it almost does make me wonder if this is a marketing thing also playing in with PS5. I wonder. I do wonder if it becomes a launch title. I wouldn't like that, though, if Horizon's launch. I'd hate that.
I don't... I'm going to... At risk of another... I'm going to talk to you after this ends. I'll say that.
Okay.
I'm going to say this publicly. I'll say this. I feel comfortable saying publicly, I feel like Naughty Dog, not Sony, but I think Naughty Dog wants this game to be the swan song for the PS4 the same way that The Last of Us was the swan song for the PS3. You know what I mean? Like the last real big high-profile game that comes out for that system that just, it sets a new bar at the very end of the generation. I do feel comfortable saying that. But, trying times, throw a dart at a date on the wall, and you might be accurate at this point.
Honestly.
Yep.
So, just going to throw my 2 cents in quick on this one. Definitely agree that I have titles But I think PlayStation took this chance and realized, hey, you know what? Why don't we just make it day and date, same launch day as the PlayStation 5 as launch title, but you get not just one but two major titles on PlayStation 5 launch day. So like Horizon Zero Dawn 2, and you get the Last of Us Part 2 as well. Or they're gonna end up doing, let's say, a 1 month before PS5 launch and say, okay, here's when Last of Us 2 is coming out, but we also want to wait and be like at the same time, here's also the PS5. That's going to come out a little bit later. You get it, you buy The Last of Us Part 2 a month beforehand, you're going to get a free upgrade, kind of like how Smart Delivery is doing for the Xbox, but you'll get it for the PlayStation 5 as a digital patch or whatever. And I think they're just going to try and do their best to market the two around each other to go hand in hand.
Maybe, dude. I don't know at this point.
It's hard.
I feel a little bit comfortable of talking about Naughty Dog in general because of reasons that I'm not going to state publicly. But I can safely say that I would not be surprised if they're having issues in terms of getting this game completely 100% done because of COVID. I think that Naughty Dog relies heavily due to their crunch-based development style. And what people think about that is certainly of their own opinions, because so many people have varying opinions on that. But I think with them not all being conclusively in one location, maybe that crunch mentality's kind of been lifted. So maybe they're not progressing as quickly as they thought they were going to progress. I don't know. It's weird because THQ Nordic seems to have no problem bumping my Biomutant pre-order year to year.
Don't get me started.
but at the same time, like, the thing is like, because next generation's rolling out, I agree with Benji. It wouldn't surprise me if PlayStation 5 launched with The Last of Us Part 2, as long as there's a PS4 version as well, I don't really see anyone having an issue with that. Now, if they bump The Last of Us Part 2 and went, here's The Last of Us Part 2 on PS5, but there was no PS4 version, people would riot. There'd be blood.
Oh yeah, that'd be a disaster. Couldn't do that.
No, there's no way that happens.
But if they go, hey, we've got a PS4 version for you guys that have the PlayStation 4, but we're also launching with a PlayStation 5 version, that would 100% make sense to me in terms of what they are doing. Because at this point, we still don't know what the launch lineup is. So what are they pitching the sell of PlayStation 5 with? Like, we know Bluepoint's got a game. We've never heard about it yet. They keep teasing like 50 different remakes and tweets. We still don't know what it is yet. Like, everyone says it's Demon's Souls.
Please.
If it's Demon's Souls, I won't buy a PS5.
I can't find that stupid game anywhere online.
Nick, I can't say publicly what I'd like to say to you right now, but you're a very bad person at times. You know?
Imagine wasting the talent of Bluepoint on a From Software game.
Oh,
moving on.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what happens with The Last of Us Part 2, and I guess Iron Man VR, which seems to be the game that everyone forgot that even delayed. Like, I did not see a single person shed a tear when Iron Man VR was delayed. Everyone was like, The Last of Us Part 2! And then it was like, but Iron Man.
Yeah, it's just up against the Last of Us 2 and a VR game is like, oh yeah. That was delayed too. Fine. Okay, let's talk about this Last of Us thing. That's kind of what it's like, you know.
Which is
sad to say.
You know what though? You know what? The craziest part of that is we're talking about an Iron Man VR game, and it's swallowed up with The Last of Us. Like, it's a Marvel game, and it's just gone. Nobody cares about it. That speaks volumes to The Last of Us.
Tim, dude, give me more Ellie. Give me more Joel. I don't want Tim, dude.
The only way people talk about like the Iron Man, they actually give you a suit as a part of like a giveaway, like a full functioning Iron Man suit that you pick up at Best Buy when you get when you pick up the game.
The closest I got was Anthem. Look how just that was.
Oh, Jared, don't worry. We had almost reminded you of it. But
I remind myself every day.
I appreciate it.
In the mirror. Jared. I cry a little bit.
Jared sits there with his collector's edition on the counter and just cries into it.
That's why it's digital, so I don't have to.
Oh man, it is what it is. But we get to move on to a pretty exciting topic to wrap up the news portion. Is Resident Evil 8? We got some more rumors. We keep getting this drip meal of rumors, and luckily enough, I was able to find all the information from all these rumors on this wonderful Windows Central piece by this Samuel Tolbert guy that I kind of like sometimes.
God, you jackass.
So we talked about this a little bit last week in terms of what to expect with Resident Evil 8. There's some loose rumors, but we've got some more. So there is, let's see, there's a lot to unpack here. So first-person mode seems almost confirmed at this point, which I gotta ask you guys, first-person or third-person for your Resident Evil games going forward?
First person
for new games, third person for remakes. There we go.
Okay, I can't argue with that.
Eric?
Yep. After Resident Evil 7, I'm sorry, it just first person makes sense. It's claustrophobic. It's more terror-inducing. The puzzles, the monsters are more immersive. It just works better from that angle. I appreciate the remakes, but I think first person is the way to go for the new entry.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah. They proved that after 7 that first person works, because I know, again, that was another one of those scenarios where we first heard about it and we were like, Resident Evil in first person, is that going to work? Yes, it does. It works. So more of that and hurry it up. That's and the rumors we've been hearing, like the little, like things about possibly like, werewolf type creatures and things like that. I think now is a good time to introduce different elements to Resident Evil. Like they kind of, being that they switched it up and went first person and introduced some new mechanics and new things, you can open up that world to other, creatures that fit that world. Excuse me. Sorry, losing my voice here.
No worries. Benji, what do you think? Have you been keeping up with the Resident Evil 8 rumors from Dust Golem?
Yeah, definitely.
He was quite accurate with some information on Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 remake. So.
Yes. I'm very happy with going back to first person. I know that's going to be mixed in the Resident Evil community because there's some people that are diehard, about third person, and then some people that are diehard about first. I think that the first person game, from Resident Evil 7, I thought was way scarier, than the remakes. The remakes are awesome. They're great. But I am a huge horror buff for games. Like I love horror genre. Dead Space is one of my all-time favorite games.
Heck yeah.
And I just think that the first person just so much scarier. So because that is part of the rumor, right? That Resident Evil 8 is back to first person.
Yeah, it's the rumor. Real quick roundup that isn't quite doing Dust Golem's post justice is that it's called Village, with the first 4 letters being the Roman numerals for 8. So it's a little pun.
Don't do that.
It worked for the 7 though. It worked for the 7 though.
It worked for 7. It worked for 7, and supposedly it has Chris Redfield as a character, but Ethan is the main protagonist. They're sticking with Ethan.
Makes sense.
Takes place in a snowy village, and it's described as having almost Silent Hill-esque occult vibes, where the villagers talk to
you're
you.
speaking my language.
Yeah,
I
right.
know.
And the demo described by Rely on Horror, another who has had some excellent reports alongside Dust Golem, so shout out to them. They do great work on horror games. Is that wolfmen like beast creatures come after you alongside a laughing witch who dissolves insects. And they say you do get a handgun at one point, but it barely does anything. And that the demo had you barricade the door and find a shotgun, and the shotgun was effective against the beast creatures, but that they were called off by like the bell chimes in the village going off, and the villagers are all acting erratic and weird. I don't know. That sounds creepy. That sounds weird. It gives me Silent Hill vibes. Yes, please.
I'm loving that. That sounds amazing. It sounds like a huge departure, which I also saw some people rumoring that 8 was going to be way different than previous. Yeah, what you're talking about, like witches and wolves and stuff like that. Like I had seen some people saying that. I have no info on that. I just saw people online saying that they had heard that 8 was going to be a big departure. So definitely sounds like one, but I'm on board. You know, I'm kind of the idea that marketing wise, it makes sense to alternate first person and third person games for Resident Evil. I think it gives them something fresh, you know, for the market, because clearly Capcom is kind of dead set on pumping Resident Evil out. If you look in the recent years, how many we've had, you know, we had 7, then 2 remake, then 3 remake, and then 8 is not far away. I do think you need to alternate it. So 8 being first person sounds awesome, and then maybe 2 years after that or something, give us another third person game.
Yeah, like maybe Revelations 3.
Yes.
Co-op game and take it back to third person.
Yep.
Leon and Ada or something. I'd
Yep.
be okay with that.
But these rumors sound amazing. As someone who loves horror games, sign me up.
There's too few good quality horror games out there that are made by like large studios, and it kind of sucks. Because growing up, we had so many actual, like, for that time, legitimately good horror games. Mostly because the controls were a pain in the ass. Really, that was like the biggest thing for games. But now you got a lot of indie studios pumping out these kind of mediocre horror games, and yeah, they're okay, but they're nothing on like Resident Evil kind of quality or like Evil Within quality or like just games like that. And I wish more studios would do it because they're so good when they're done right.
I would
Like,
lose my mind if we got a Dead Space reboot. I would lose my
Wouldn't
mind.
that be awesome?
I'm sorry, like I try to stay as unbiased as possible, but I'm always going to be upset about the
No one
fact that
should-
we didn't get a Dead Space 4 this
I
gen.
know.
It's crazy to me.
Ah.
It's crazy to me.
So good.
And maybe they thought Dead Space was damaged goods, you know, after 3, but it's like, it's been long enough now. Let's just reboot it. Come on, baby.
That's the thing. That's the thing. Because apart from Capcom, and Capcom, God bless them, they're doing an amazing job. Like you said, they're pumping Resident Evil out now like it's going out of style. But who else is doing AAA horror?
Yeah, not many. Almost no one.
I mean,
Exactly.
Last of Us it's got some survival horror elements. Like there's some stuff in there, but I don't think it's fair to call that a straight up horror game.
Agreed.
Like,
Yeah, outside of Capcom, it's not much. You know, you have some like growing studios, like the team behind Soma. Oh, come on, Frictional. You have like companies like Frictional that are growing, but they're still not that triple A. You know, yeah, it's really almost just Capcom because Bethesda's done now. I think. I don't think. Oh well, no, they have that Tokyo game, but Evil Within. I don't think there will ever be an Evil Within 3.
no.
Yeah, I'll hold my breath. We'll see, because Ghostwire Tokyo does look like it could be a horror game. So
Yeah,
we'll see. I don't even know what's going on there.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
I will also throw in the ring for that one, for one game to look forward to. Actually, it's not really a game, but Project Mara by Ninja Theory as well. I think that's something we need to look out for.
Yes.
Let's not forget that one.
Good call out.
Yeah, like I'm really interested in what they're looking to do there because
Think they described it as like a real world horror kind of thing.
real world terror. So basically, things that you would experience from real life, the experiences and the feeling, they want to recreate that, and that is terrifying to me as someone who grew up with night terrors consistently every single night for almost 10 years in my childhood. That is not something that I want people to really re-experience. But if they're trying to aim for that, my God, go for it, because that's impressive things to do.
Yeah, and you know what? And like, if we're talking ways off right now. But I think Kojima Productions, their next game, he said he wanted to do a horror game. If Kojima does a horror game, I'm there for it. I actually am I'm not sure if I'm a minority in this, but I actually wish with Death Stranding he had gone a little deeper on the horror, because there's some really cool horror aspects to it. But it almost felt like he held back a little bit on diving deeper into it. I was like, yeah, a little deeper, make it even darker. Like, it was a pretty dark game, but
didn't PlayStation want him to, or did I don't remember. I swear I remember reading something like saying exactly that though, where it was either he didn't make it as horror as PlayStation wanted, or as PlayStation didn't want him to.
I remember seeing that article, but I never read the sourcing on it.
It's
so I'm not
interesting though.
I as someone that does the sales part of it, there's one red flag in that. I know what rumor you're talking about. There's one red flag there that definitely makes me question how true it is. When they talked about the number of units that were still on store shelves that hadn't sold.
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact figure, but it was something enormous. And all I'll say in regards to that is it's extremely rare to have a game nowadays ship that many physical units on store shelves for any reason. So that would surprise me. But I mean, maybe that rumor is true. It's just when I saw that, I was like, I can't remember the number. I think they said something like 3 million copies unsold on shelves or something like that. I'm like, that almost never happens.
Well,
maybe 15 years ago, but nowadays
that kind of makes sense
rare.
because I picked up the Death Stranding's collector's edition, $100 Canadian, not too long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
It's interesting too because like I was on Death Stranding day one. Like I bought the Steelbook edition, couldn't get the collector's edition. But at my EB Games, they were allotted like 45 copies of the game, and I live in like a small town of 1,500 people, and they were allotted like 40 copies of the game, and those ended up going on sale for I think $29, and they were still sitting on a fair amount of them. Which is depressing to me because I really enjoy Death Stranding for what it is, but I understand why necessarily people, like your average consumer, isn't going to pick that up because it's a hard sell to, your Call of Duty and Madden guys. Hey, you want to play a game where you wander around the open space with a baby? It's a hard pitch.
Yeah.
I just hope Kojima can keep doing Kojima things. That's really all I want him to do is just keep making weird and interesting things.
Mm-hmm.
You knew this game was telling the future, man.
I know. I'll tell you what, you look back on that game now, I was someone who adored it when it came out, second game last year. But yeah, WoW has that game aged interestingly.
Yeah. Benji, 100%. I was actually talking with my mother about a week ago. I was like, Mom, playing a game where you're going around in a hazmat suit delivering resources to isolated people, it just hits different these days.
Yeah, it's got to be weird. For people playing it the first time right now, it's got to be so weird.
Yep.
Like that pizza delivery mission really hits different now. Like that mission really hits different now.
There's alcohol ones in there too. I'm like, yeah, I need that right about.
Like all they're doing is delivering to my house at this point. Steady stream of pizza and alcohol is all I need to survive. Basically. So for our final wrap-up discussion topic, Final Fantasy VII Remake, whether people have issues with it or not, or everything else, it's generally accepted that this is the bar for remakes going forward. It's an absolute masterpiece in how they reworked the story and everything else. So we're just going to go down the panel and ask you guys, what game from your past that would you love to see get this treatment? Whether it's from the Final Fantasy VII to Final Fantasy VII Remake to a reboot of a franchise, a la Doom 2016. What game would you like to see come back? And of course, we'll start with our guest Benji. What game would you like to see get the all-star treatment and come back?
Yeah, so thinking about this, it was kind of tough because it's like so many of like the ones I would kind of want have been done somewhat recently. We saw, if we're talking about like games I grew up with, like I was so excited for the Crash remakes and the Spyro remakes. Those made me so happy playing those. But a lot of the older ones that I would want, the Halos and stuff like that, they've gotten remade. So the one I fall back on, it's not a super old game, but if you go back and play it now, it just feels really janky. I would love to see a complete reworking of the original Mass Effect. I love Mass Effect. I love that franchise. You go back and play Mass Effect 1, I still think the story and it's amazing, but the gameplay is pretty rough. They hadn't nailed that gameplay loop like they did in 2 and 3. Some of it's just real, almost archaic feeling a little bit. And I would love to see that just get completely reworked, update the mechanics, the shooting and everything to feel way better, expand out on it a little bit more. For me, I would love to see that done with the original Mass Effect.
That's a good one, dude. That's a good one. It is a crime we haven't gotten a Mass Effect remaster remake trilogy.
Yes,
Like,
I agree.
They are on back compat, and I am super appreciative of that. I do appreciate that, but you're right. Unlike 2 and 3, you can still sort of play, but 1, it's a little rough.
Yeah, the gameplay just doesn't hold up. Like I said, I think the story does. Mass Effect 1 still has, of the 3, maybe my favorite story. Like, because I love the sense of mystery in Mass Effect 1. Like, 2 and 3 definitely have a bit of that, but Mass Effect 1, it's like, first finding out about the Reapers and everything. It's like, yeah, it's all so amazing. Like, I remember when I was playing that game for the first time, it just blew my mind. Like, as someone who loved sci-fi and RPGs, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the holy grail. But yeah, you go back now and the gameplay just does not hold up. So I would love to see that game get redone.
I actually remember it was because that was back when I was a teenager when I got to play that game a couple years after it came out. I discovered I didn't play it at launch, but I played it a couple years after it came out, and I remember staying up night after night, red-eyed and bleary. Just so good. It was amazing. And one of my favorite gaming memories of all time will be at 3 a.m. in the morning hearing Sovereign's speech.
Yes.
That is some of BioWare's best writing, if not their best writing ever. You exist because we allow it, and you will end because we demand it. I just remember being floored, thinking,
yeah, you nailed it.
This is the new medium. I was like,
this
is it. Gaming has hit film levels.
That was the moment I realized I was playing like an utterly amazing game. Like I loved it before that, but I agree with you. Literally that exact scene, Sovereign's speech, while that's going on, I was just like, oh my God, this is incredible. Mm-hmm. Like this is blowing me away. The sense of like dread and unknown, you're just like, you're hit with this like terrifying foe that you know very little about. They do such a good job of like wrapping them in mystery, which unfortunately I don't quite think pays off in the end. But at the time when you're playing Mass Effect 1, yeah, I would love to see that get reworked.
Yeah, I agree with that one, 100%.
I feel bad that I've never played a Mass Effect game now.
You should. You should feel bad.
You keep making so many issues with. Come on. My God.
I'm sorry. The best BioWare RPG is Baldur's Gate. I will fix that.
He's just gonna bring up Baldur's Gate, Sam.
Yeah.
Over and over.
Yeah. You been on this podcast for how many years now?
Yeah.
Get with the program. No, I like 100%. One of the reasons I haven't jumped into Mass Effect is because when I got interested in that style of game was like 2016, 2017, and someone told me, they're like, oh, don't play Mass Effect 1. It's rough. It's terrible. Just play 2 and 3. And I was like, I don't like skipping parts of a game because I feel like I'm really missing the core, and people told me how amazing the original Mass Effect was. So even if they did a remaster collection, I would dive headfirst into it just to experience, because people, like, I grew up on Baldur's Gate as my BioWare love, and just to hear other people fall in love with BioWare for whether it be Mass Effect or Dragon Age, I really want to experience that. So Mass Effect remake would be amazing.
Yeah, but you know what, Nick? You're the type that you don't hold like what a game was like against it or whatever. So you're kind of like one of those rare people that can't appreciate, it is for what it is. So I think you would totally be okay jumping into Mass Effect as it is.
I agree. I was going to say the exact same thing Eric was. Like, seriously, dude, I think you could grit your teeth and play it for the story.
Dude, the story is so good.
It really is, man.
Mass Effect 1 is top tier RPG writing. It's so good.
It's one of the best sci-fi stories ever.
And full disclosure, I came to Mass Effect late. It had already been out for a couple of years, and I kept hearing about it, but I just hadn't gotten around to it. And when I played it, I was one of those things where it's like I felt like I needed to give penance to the gaming gods for the masterpiece of a game. I was like, what have I been missing for like the last year?
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
It's actually funny because, like, as you guys know, I was a huge esports guy. I didn't play a lot of single player games. I was really heavy into the Call of Duty and whatnot. I went to my EB Games, and I was like, I want to get something different. I don't want Call of Duty. I want something different. And he pointed me to Mass Effect and BioShock, and he was like, pick.
Oh man,
both.
And, what a choice! What a choice!
And I picked BioShock because it was a first-person shooter. because
Mhm.
I was
I mean,
trying
you
to get
didn't
off
go
Call of
wrong.
Duty.
It's amazing.
And
Yeah.
I played Bioshock, and then I spent the rest of that generation catching up on games that I was like, whoa, how did I miss these?
Yeah.
And like,
Nick, would you kindly go play Mass Effect?
yeah. You know what? I will do it for the culture. I will play Mass Effect before my birthday in August. We'll do that.
There you go.
But we'll bump over to Jared. Jared, what game would you like to see come back?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so this one was this is a tough question to answer because I got a lot of old school favorites I'd like to see reimagined and kind of re-brought back, and I guess it kind of already has last year, but not exactly the way I imagined it or the way I would imagine this game, and that would be Jedi Knight Academy. That's one game that I would love to see come
Ooh.
back because, man, it's such a good old school classic first person RPG. And then you got Jedi Knight Academy 2, which even to me is even better than the first one substantially. And like, yeah, I can't drone on too much about this. Basically, that's my pick. It's
I've
such
never
a
played those
classic.
games. I've never
It-
played those.
They're wonderful.
It's wild, absolutely wild. Dozens of lightsabers all clashing online. Like back in the old days, it was good. It was real good.
It was so. It was like it was the RP like Star Wars RPG sort of thing, but not an RPG. It's weird how to describe it, but yeah, it was a phenomenal, great storyline too.
That's awesome. I've played a few of the Star Wars games. Like I played the Battlefront games, and I did Dark Forces was a huge one for me on PC.
So good.
Back in the DOS days.
Yeah, buddy.
But all those are backwards compatible or available on Switch now. So I'm like, yeah, I got to get to those at some point. I just need like the year to stop, delay everything a year, and slow down time and add like 24 hours to a day so I can get through all these games that I never played.
Still not enough time.
Yeah, that's true. Eric, what game would you like to see come back?
I would like, and this is a shout out to both Alcoholicaust and to Tony because they both kind of put it out there. I want to see Metal Gear Solid rebuilt in Fox Engine, ground up.
Ooh.
That was my second pick.
Let's go.
I agree. I almost went for it. I was close. I was debating between Metal Gear and Mass Effect. I'm with you. That's a great
Well, we got both covered then, Benji, because both of those need to happen, man.
That's a great choice.
It's a crime against humanity that Konami sits on both the Silent Hill IP and the Metal Gear Solid IP and has the Fox engine.
Castlevania.
Yeah.
And Castlevania is so hot right now, and they're like, "Oh, okay, nothing. We'll give you this collection, and then we're not going to give you any more of the collections."
Yeah, no, you get a pachinko machine. That's what you get.
Yeah,
Oh, it hurts.
yeah.
Well, don't you remember that rumor in 2017 where they were like, Silent Hill is coming back. They redid the licensing and everything, and then that Silent Hill pachinko machine came out.
That hurt. That
Yeah.
hurt. Dude, like Metal Gear Solid, like you want to talk about influential games for storytelling.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Putting the path forward, like getting a new generation to experience that would be something else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that game also did not age well mechanically either. Those games are rough to go back and play.
Oh yeah, and it's just it's just the mechanical polygons and faceless like characters, whatever. But I just remember, man, like bringing that game home and booting it up and just the opening cinematic. We had not seen that before.
Yeah,
It was
It
like
was groundbreaking for its time.
Yeah, it
Completely
was-
groundbreaking.
it was just floored. I was like floored. Like what? Like what are we doing here? This is insane. So I can only imagine what like that story being brought forward for a new generation in Fox Engine would just be insane.
Psycho Mantis on PS5 just give me
Oh,
all
man.
that.
Oh, man. And to throw on my sales hat for a second, that thing would sell enormous.
Yes.
The zeitgeist around it, the cultural like importance for gaming. I mean, you want to talk about a build-up. I mean, if it was done well, that game would sell some serious units.
Yeah, I just want to see that banter between he and like Revolver Ocelot and all that stuff, man.
Oh, yeah.
Just be ridiculous.
Man, yeah.
Ridiculous.
I'd play it, and you guys know my feelings about you know who.
I play it. Just saying.
Well, yeah, this is the guy who sat there and trashed Death Stranding for 6 months before it released. So it was like, this is whack, Kojima's whack, everything's whack. And then the game comes out, and he's the first one to beat it. And won't shut up about it.
See, but that's the thing too, man. It's like, that's like my era of stuff. So it's like I understand like the Kojima stands. Like, I understand why people feel like the way they do, like about the dude. I mean, just there's like a ton of nostalgia around the stuff he created for. Like
he was a huge pusher of cinematic experience in games before cinematic experience was ever thought of in video games.
And he's still among the very top in terms of cinematics. You can talk about his dialogue writing. There's definitely a little bit to question in regards to that. But if you want to talk about pure cinema, I mean, if you want to talk about pure the way he sets up the shots and the cutscenes, I mean, he's still among, in my opinion, the top 3 in the entire industry at it. The only people I put up there with him are Neil Druckmann. I think Neil's up there now with him. And Corey might be approaching that. Corey might be getting there. I don't think God of War purely on a cinematic level is anywhere near Death Stranding, but I definitely think he's moving that way. But in terms of just the shot, the way it's set up, the way it's filmed, I mean, Kojima is still among the very, very best at it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Dialogue can be a little sketchy.
Yeah, there's I had
always has been though, Benji.
Weird stuff. I always laughed is like, you guys remember when Metal Gear Solid 5 launched and everyone was like, there's some sketchy things about this. I'm like, have you never played a Metal Gear game? Like, I had questions growing up. I was like looking at my dad like, Dad, what does this mean? And he's like, are you old enough to play this? I'm like, shh.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I love Death Stranding, but not to go into any spoilers, but the Mario reference scene, I mean, my soul cringed. I think you all know which reference I'm talking about. I adored that game, and when that line was uttered, I was like, oh my. This is not very good writing.
It's like, it's very Kojima.
Yeah. Sam.
But yeah.
What game would you like to see come back?
Okay, so Benji took my number 1 pick, and I'm glad.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, please, because it let me go for my other one, which, amusingly enough, is both a BioWare game and a Star Wars game, and that is Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, that was in my list of maybes.
That game was influential to me. Given my age, I'm a little younger than some of you guys, and given when I was growing up, that was the first real RPG I played. That was the first one, and it was my exposure. And sure, it's rough. It's rough as all hell today. But that story, and spoilers for a game that came out in 2003. Okay, sorry if you haven't played it by now, you had your chance. Sorry about this.
There's no limitations on spoilers when it's that far.
Yeah, exactly. Like the whole discovery and being a Jedi and saving this Jedi who could supposedly help everyone, but then learning there's more to it, and the council isn't telling you everything, and this epic quest across planets, and building your party, and the character writing, HK-47, my God, one of the classics. And then learning that you're actually the Dark Lord, that you lost your mind, and you wanted to save the Republic. It was everything. It was absolutely everything. It was fantastic Star Wars storytelling. It holds up. In terms of writing, the writing and the characters still hold up to this day. And but it's not aged well visually or, in how it controls and how the combat goes. It's very dated. And look at how well Fallen Order has sold. Even as it has some glitches, Fallen Order has sold really well. It's broken EA's predictions, right, Benji?
Yes, yeah, and the prediction's funny. I remember when they put out their prediction. I think it was 5 to 6 million by the end of March, if I recall correctly, their original estimate. And it's funny because that's a big number, 5 to 6 million for a game that came out towards the end of last year. That you're a good seller if you're hitting that range. It's funny because I remember when that projection came out, you saw a lot of people being like, good luck with that. Good luck, single player only. We'll see. Star Wars as a franchise is in rough shape. And instead, it looks like it's going to sell, 8 million by the end of March is what it looks like it sold. So completely crushed. Yeah, that game did amazing.
Mm-hmm. Right. So imagine if that kind of classic was given the care of like a Final Fantasy VII remake, where the stories were expanded, the characters were given more to say and more to do, the combat was more action-based and brought up to speed and everything looked pretty. You could rebuild it in Unreal Engine 4. I just, yeah, that would be that would be for me what Final Fantasy VII Remake is for so many other people.
Yeah, no, that's a great pick. That's a really good choice.
Yeah, I can't argue with that at all. Knights of the Old Republic it's a classic, like undeniable classic, and it's actually a game that on this list I've actually played. So, whew, save myself that shame.
Yeah, you better.
So for my pick is for a game that probably nobody, maybe Benji's played, depending on what his gaming setup was back in the 90s. This is a throwback game. It was made even before they were known as id Software. I want to see Quake come back. Put Doom on put Doom on the back burner. Doom Eternal is the pinnacle of what they're going to be able to do with that franchise. Bring back Quake or bring back Hexen. Bring back one of those two, because those were pinnacle FPS games for their time. And I think with what they've done with Doom, if they were to do something like that with Quake, even though Quake is I'm not going to say it's a long dead franchise, but it's been on the back burner for a long time. If they were to bring that back, it would be huge, because we've seen them they brought Wolfenstein and Doom back, and like they made the Doom Slayer have a personality through shotgun clicks. They made BJ Blazkowicz a complicated and emotional character. I really think they could do something special with a new Quake game, and I don't know. I rebought them on Steam. I've been playing a little bit of them, and I just really miss that style of FPS games. It's really video gamey. And I know a lot of people kind of turn their nose at that now, but I'm so in love with the mechanics of 90s style retro shooters. That's why I'm such a big fan of like New Blood Interactive with what they did with Dusk and Medieval and others. And I just really think a Quake reboot could be really, really good. I just don't know if it's got the brand recognition anymore to make it relevant. Unfortunately, that's
a really good choice, and I actually have a theory that that's happening over there at Bethesda. I actually think it is. This isn't inside info, but I when you look at the setup, when you look at what they have had going on, I wonder if it's id doing it. I have a theory it might actually be Machine Games, but I'm not sure. But I think a new Quake is going to come. I think Wolfenstein might be on the back burner.
Yeah, if you look at it, like, Wolfenstein got 3 games now. 2.5, 3 games, whatever you want to call Youngblood. I actually like Youngblood more than a lot of people did. I think it's fine. I played it in co-op with Nick. But it's definitely a step back from New Colossus and the New Order. But that got, 3 games. Doom got 2 games. Let Quake shine. Give Quake a chance in the spotlight.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if Machine Games is actually working on bringing that back, because I do think you're going to get a Doom sequel like fast-tracked, because it doubled 2016 sales, and I've talked about this a little bit online. Bethesda outside, because Bethesda publishes it, outside of Elder Scrolls and Elder Scrolls and Fallout, Bethesda is severely struggling for financial successes right now. Wolfenstein 2 underperformed at market. Youngblood underperformed at market. Prey underperformed. Evil Within 2 underperformed. They've had a long string of games that just really have not been financial success stories. And Doom Eternal, doubled the revenue of 2016. So I definitely think the third Doom game is happening next at id. So I don't think id is going to be available for Quake. So I'm wondering, this is all theory work, but you may get your wish. You may get your wish. I wonder if Machine Games is working on bringing Quake back.
Yeah, I really don't care, because a lot of people people don't really understand that Machine Games is just a subsidiary. Like, that was a sub studio built from id Software. It's essentially id Part 2, essentially. Right. The only thing that kind of makes me hesitant about Quake coming back is I always heard there's a little bit of animosity between Romero and Carmack in terms of IP ownerships and everything else. And that was part of the reason why Doom and Wolfenstein took so long to come back into the public eye. But I kind of see, since Romero's doing his own thing, I don't really see that animosity being an issue anymore. So I'm kind of curious to could we see other, because id Software cranked out so many FPS games in the early 90s. Like, people don't realize, like, they cranked out Doom 2, Wolfenstein 3D, Quake, and yeah, and like I think they did Heretic, or that was Raven. I think that was Raven back in the day. But they cranked out like 4 or 5 of the most legendary FPSs in like a 2-year period. And that in itself is crazy to me, but I would love to see Quake come back, or something along those lines, because I think there's a market for it. I think the success of indie games that we've seen, like games like Dusk, hugely performed well, and that's just a throwback to those kind of games, so people love those games. And I think if they deliver something that's even 3/4 as polished as Doom Eternal, they have a hit on their hands.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, Quake was legendary for its multiplayer. And it's like, you know, Bethesda doesn't have a lot of multiplayer options right now, you know, so that would also fit into their wheelhouse of, hey, you know, this gives us a strong, I mean, I would love to see it have a big single player too, not just a multiplayer only game, but I'm just saying, you know, it would also tick a box for them of giving them possibly a big multiplayer shooter for them too.
Yeah, because spoiler alert, even though I like the game, Fallout 76 is not what they were hoping it was. But yeah, I'm hopeful. I think out of all of these, I think all of these have a good chance of coming back, because if anyone remade any of these games, I don't see any of these games that anyone mentioned not selling a couple million copies. It's just a matter of who's going to develop it and what publishing rights stand and everything else. Because it's always so sad, is like, you see games that could be absolutely amazing and mind-melding in this new generation upcoming, but it's like, yeah, well, the publishing rights are tied up in this, and this is tying this up, and everything else. And it's sad. I just want good remakes. And like, I remember being so done with remasters at the start of this generation, because Activision re-released every 360 and PS3 game on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. And now we've got these remakes that are just absolutely astounding. And now it's like, there's so many games I want to come back. Like,
and like you mentioned on the beginning of this, like, I feel like Final Fantasy VII has helped raise that bar. You know, regardless of how certain people may feel about it, it's like, this is really making me think about what remakes should be in the future. And they've added so much to it. Like, you know, I agree with you. I was kind of like burned out on the remasters early this gen, because it felt like we were just getting these somewhat cheap remasters instead of new games. You know, like those first couple of years, there were so many, like, it felt like almost cash in, like there wasn't a ton of new added into it and stuff. But yeah, now that we see these Resident Evil 2s and 3s and Final Fantasy 7s, it's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. But we'll close out the show now. I want to shout out to Benji for coming on. Where can people find your work and what you do?
Sorry, your mic cut out for a second. Was that for me?
Yeah, sorry. I have a common Discord issue for some reason.
No. So, yep, Benji-Sales, thanks for having me on. This was an awesome conversation. I loved being on the show, so thank you for inviting me on. Find me on Twitter at Benji-Sales. That's the best place to get a hold of me. That's where I'm the most active. But also definitely dive into the YouTube if I do a live chat on there where, you know, anybody can chat with me in real time. We talk about games. We talk about the industry. And on YouTube, it's the same thing. If you just search Benji-Sales, you'll pull me right up.
Yeah, absolutely, and he does a lot of great stuff, and it's a great way to get consumable sales information, which is less confusing than sometimes pulling up a schedule can be. But I appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge and your just your general gaming enthusiasm with us. It was great to have you on. Definitely would love to have you on again at a later date. We'll get to the rest of the cast outros. Sam, where can people find the work you do?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Samuel Tolbert. That's Tolbert. Just come talk to me there. Usually I'm tweeting about my work or something I'm playing or watching, so please come hang out with me. Happy to chat with you. And then you can also find everything I write on Windows Central, Android Central, and iMore.
Yeah, and go check out Sam's work. He does a really great job of covering a wide variety of stuff over there. And Animal Crossing is the king, right, Sam?
Animal Crossing is doing stupid traffic. I am not. It's wild. It's
Yeah.
absolutely wild.
Not surprised.
People care about their Animal Crossing. That's what I'm gonna say. People care about getting their bells. People care.
It's the
about,
new Tamagotchi.
Yeah, people care about getting their Nook miles. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way.
When those sales numbers come out, people's minds are gonna.
I won't
I
be
am-
surprised.
Dude, I am eagerly awaiting the press releases on that and the March/April NPD info.
Yeah,
I
some
am
people
very-
are in for. They're in for some shocks, and when they see Switch hardware as well.
Yeah, it was just the Japanese numbers alone. Just the Japanese numbers alone kind of melted my mind. So
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what the rest of the world's shaping up to be because, like, I'm gonna say a solid 99% of my Switch friends list is 24/7 Animal Crossing now. But Jared, where can people find the work you do?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at X as well, over at lordsgaming.net. And something a little bit new, I am actually starting up a new YouTube channel called The Neon Garden, where I'll be doing some fun little gaming YouTube voiceovers and stuff like that. And I'll have a talk series mostly focusing on mental health called Let's Talk. So once that's all up and running, I'll definitely be talking about that a lot more. But yeah.
Absolutely, and make sure you check out and support these guys and the work they do. Eric, where can people find you?
Pretty easily these days. It's home.
That's a good answer.
But you can find me on Twitter, EC Jackson with an X. And when I'm not here Saturday nights, you can find me on Brat Podcast Wednesdays at 9:00.
Right on, man. And I'm Nicholas Downey. You can find me on Twitter at Undead3XVI. Tweet at me about games or send me threatening DMs. That seems to be the in-betweens I get in here these days. So I appreciate everyone that tuned into the podcast. You can also find all my work at lordsofgaming.net. And got some good stuff cooking up over there. Got some articles that I'm working on this week that'll be pretty interesting. So stay tuned for that. I appreciate everyone that tuned into the show. I appreciate all the love and support that we've gotten. I hope everyone stays safe as these upcoming weeks continue to be crazy. Don't forget, you can now find the Gaming Perspective podcast on Spotify and Anchor.fm, and hopefully soon Apple Podcasts as well. Appreciate all you guys, and we will see you guys next Saturday.